Tell it like it is. Put it on the line. And that was one of the great experiences I had in meeting this incredible gentleman, Mr. Schoaf, when I was 25 years old. Mr. Schoaf only went to the 8th grade in school, so we put things in very simple language. But I tell you what he did do. He laid it on the line. He said, Mr. Rohn, if you're 25 years old and you're an American male and you've been to high school and 1 year of college and you're not at least a third of your way towards your fortune, he said, isn't something wrong? Now, see, I'd never looked at it like that before. As being wrong, he said, something's wrong, right? He said there's nothing wrong with the country and nothing wrong with the companies and there's nothing wrong with the banks and the money, but there's something wrong with your plan. There's nothing wrong with you, but there's something wrong with your thinking, something wrong with your plan. You bought the wrong story. You bought the wrong formula. And it's easy to wind up a nice person and broke. It's easy to wind up sincere and poor. I'm telling you, you can be sincere and poor, and you can work hard and be poor if you buy the wrong formula, buy the wrong plan. You didn't add up the percentages. You never took out the calculator. You never counted the cost, as an ancient phrase says. Now, see, that kind of blunt, straight language really helped to uncover where my problem lied. Let me give you one of the most clear formulas he gave me that helped to change my life. We deal in what we call basics in one of my lectures. Basics, fundamentals. And there's just a few fundamentals. And there aren't any new fundamentals. You've got to beware of somebody who says, I got a new fundamentals. And no, fundamentals are old. You got to be suspicious of a guy that says, we're manufacturing antiques. You say, no, you don't manufacture antiques. Come on. Here's one of the greatest of basics and fundamentals. It comes from an ancient Bible phrase. Here's what it says. Whatever you sow, you will reap. We call it simply the law of sowing and reaping. Right? Simply put, the law of sowing and reaping. Now then, Mr. Schoaf said to me, Mr. Rohn, there's another way to quote this law that may very well help to discover where the problem lies. I said, okay, I'm ready. Here's what he said. It's also quoted like this. Whatever you reap is what you've sown. I thought, wow, I never thought about that. Now there went my list of all the things I blame for my current circumstances. If you don't like the crop, who do you look up? Answer, whoever planted it. And where do you find who planted your crop? Answer, in the mirror. That's where you go come fall, come harvest time. You go to the mirror, and if necessary, you say, a few skinny carrots? I got to be unimpressed. Where were you last spring? Asleep. Didn't you read the books? Did you break your hoe? Now, we call this straight. This is talking straight. This is telling it like it is. I asked the question last night, am I reading enough books or am I not? If I engage in my current financial practices, will it take me toward the fortune I would wish for in the next 10 years or will it not? If I keep up my current health practices, will I have the vitality and the health and the vigor to do all the things I want to do 5 years from now? Will I or won't I? Are my current practices taking me where I would really like to go, or have I been kidding myself for quite some time? I had a day just before I met Mr. Schoaf called Do Not Kid Myself Anymore Day. Here's where I am after 25 years. Here's what I've got. There's no use Mickey Mousing with the numbers. There's no use trying to stretch it. There's no use trying to excuse it. There's no use trying to paint it some phony color. Let's tell it like it is. Because it's the truth that starts the freedom mechanism working. It's the truth that starts to relieve the mind of all the guilt and all the excuses and get right down to where it is. When I finally discovered that the government wasn't my problem and that prices weren't my problem and that it wasn't the company and it wasn't company policy and it wasn't my negative relatives and it wasn't the weather and it wasn't the economy and it wasn't the community, when I finally discovered it was me, we call that trauma. Now, after I had passed through the trauma of discovering that it was me and not all the other things I'd blamed all those years, when I finally went through the trauma, now suddenly it dawned on me, hey, if it's me, I can do something about that right away. And then I started getting excited after my trauma had passed. See, if it's the government, I don't give you much chance. If it's prices, I don't give you much hope. If it's other people, I don't give you much of a chance, because I'm telling you, it probably isn't going to change. It's going to be about like it's always been, right? Opportunity mixed with difficulty. So if all those things are going to remain in place the next few years, which I imagine they will, the only change that is really going to dramatically affect your life is you. Mr. Shove said to me, Mr. Rohn, if it isn't going well for you, you don't say, what's wrong out there? You say, what's wrong in here? There's a Black Heritage spiritual that says, it's not my mother nor my father. It's not my brother nor my sister. It's me. What a revelation. But once you find out it's you, that's something you can go to work on this very day. You can start to make a new stretch today. You can start reading some new books today. You can sign up for some new classes today. You can start engaging in constructive thinking today. You can make some life-changing decisions today. See, you don't ever have to be the same again after this evening, only by choice. And while you wait for prices to come down, and while you wait for the outside to change, I would go to work immediately and quickly on the refinement of your own thinking and the refinement of your own disciplines, and watch how quickly the equity of that starts to grow. Now, this is called dealing in straight talk. When a father who's 40 and broke living in this country finally discovers when his children say, Daddy, how come we're not rich? If he wants to speak the truth finally, he says, I'll tell you why. I smoked it. I spent it in small daily pieces. And I didn't know it was going to mount up to be a fortune over the last 20 years. To be honest with you, I spent our fortune on non-essentials. Somehow, they got to me with all the trinkets, and I didn't know what a price it was going to pay. We call this dealing in truth. Straight talk. Tell it like it is. Okay? Next. In the art of persuasion, challenge. Challenge. We all respond to a challenge. I don't know a normal human being that doesn't respond to a challenge. From the time we were small, how high can you jump? How fast can you run? How much can you do? Can you win? Right? We all respond to a challenge. So part of the art of persuasion is challenge. Here's one of the greatest challenges Mr. Shoaff gave me. He said, let's go do it. That's the great challenge. Not you go do it, let's go do it. Boy, it's easy to say you go do it. You go change your life, you go be successful, you go make the decisions. But how much better if somebody comes along and says, let's go do it. Let's read the extra books, let's make the decisions, let's pour it on. For the next 6 months, let's go full speed 110% and see what comes of that. Boy, what an inspiring thing when somebody says, let's go do it. That's the greatest of challenge. Let's. But life is a challenge. What else is new? It is so important to articulate the challenge, the press, the push, because the push is on. But that's what life is all about, accepting the challenge, driving the roots deep, becoming as strong as possible, accepting everything that comes and making it into what you wish to make it, attempting your best, trying your hardest, thinking well, reading well, living well, struggling with it all. That's called the challenge. But that's what makes life worthwhile. That's where the value is. The struggle for high ideals to make something unique out of your life. I don't know how better to put it. That's it, the challenge. Now, here's the last part in the art of persuasion. The word is passion. Some new books just written. A passion for excellence. Passion is the emotion. Unique thing about emotions. Emotions is what gives us the drive. Emotions is the spirit. Emotions is the life. It isn't just knowledge that makes you wealthy. It's knowledge mixed with feelings and attitudes and emotions. The surge of feelings and emotions. But here's the key. Our emotions need to be educated. We've got to send emotions to school. We call civilization the intelligent management of human emotions. You've got to have the drive. Without the power, you don't get anywhere. But now we've got to have the power well educated and well directed. But that's what it takes in the final art of persuasion, putting yourself into the picture. Passion, emotion, beliefs, convictions. If you can learn to articulate those well, if you'll learn to let that flow, not just from the surface, but from down deep, from a lifetime of experience, if you'll draw from all of those feelings and commitments and awareness, even with some misgivings, even with not knowing it all, even with a sense of humility, but it's that flow of emotion that finally now seals the point in the final art of persuasion, when people have picked up the essence that you really believe and are committed to what you've been talking about, and that's why you laid it on the line. That's why you borrowed every quote you could borrow. That's why you said it as well as you could say it. That's why you told every story you could. That's why you used yourself front and center. It's because you so passionately believe in the moment and what you're trying to accomplish in the way of decision making in touching somebody else's life. Now, how good can you get at all of this, the art of persuasion? Probably one of the best illustrations I can give you is an ancient Bible story. I'm an amateur on the Bible, but there's some neat stories. One is so dramatically told, it bears repeating. It says, King Agrippa was advised one day that he had a famous man in his prison. And they came and said, "Oh, Agrippa, we have got the man you've been wanting for a long time. We've got him locked up in your dungeon." And King Agrippa knew who the man was. He was the great leader of the early Christians, formerly known as Saul from Tarsus, now known as Paul, apostle, leader of the early Christians. And Agrippa has been brought this incredible news that this man is in his dungeon. I'm sure Agrippa said, "You don't mean the man himself." They said, "O king, we have got the man." Agrippa evidently had studied this whole Christian movement and had watched it grow. And evidently he knew a lot about the man. And he said, "Bring him to me. I got to see the man in person." So they hauled him out of the dungeon and stood this man in front of the king. And the king took one look at Paul and said, "Paul, I've heard all about you. Unfortunately, you find yourself in my dungeon, but what is going on here? What is this Christian movement? Why are all these people willing to give their lives for this incredible cause and willing to sacrifice? It's growing like a prairie fire, spreading like wildfire." He said, "What's going on here? What is happening? What is this Christian thing? What about you?" And Agrippa said, "Tell me your story." He shouldn't have asked. Right? One more time, with eloquence to spare. And if you're a good reader of drama and stories, this is one of the most important ones to read in all of literature and history. He gave the greatest example of somebody who knew how to use the language to tell his story. And he went through and told his story. He said, "I used to hate the Christians. I was known as Saul from Tarsus. And then one day I'm making it for Damascus. This great light shines out of heaven, knocks me flat, grinds my face in the dirt, and blinds me for 3 days." He told the story with eloquence and precision and drama. And then he said, "I was finally persuaded to be a Christian, became a leader, and now the people I hated I now love." He went through the whole scenario. And he wrapped up his presentation to King Agrippa by saying, "O king, I only now have one request." And Agrippa said, "Pray tell, what is that?" And the great man said, "My request is, I wished you were just like me. I wish you had what I got, except for these chains. I don't wish these chains on you, but for the change, not the chains. If you could see what I can see, if you could have what I've got, that would be my greatest wish." What an occasion. What a chance for eloquence. What a chance for precision of language. What a chance to relate your experiences and pull from the past and relate it to the future and bring it to the drama of the present. And when he finished his story, the story says the king did send him back to the dungeon, but before he sent him back, he did look squarely at the man and say, "I must admit, sir, you have almost persuaded me to be a Christian." What a drama. What an occasion. So how good can you get at this art of persuasion and communication? Well, you might get so good you might have a chance to persuade the king. Let alone anybody else between you and the king, they won't have a chance. All right. Communications. Touching people with words. One more formula in touching people with words. It's going to be 20% what you know, 80% how you feel. So I'm asking you to work on knowledge. But the greatest of skills is to work on the precision of emotions, feelings, commitment, passion, for the cause, for the occasion, to solve a problem, to touch somebody truly with spirit as well as mind.